Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Saajid, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. I hope you're having a great weekend. I am certainly having a great weekend because I am very excited to be sharing with you all of the books that I read this year. So I only read 33 books, which doesn't sound like a lot to most people on BookTube, but the good thing about not reading that much books in a year is that I could talk about them all at the end of the year. And I will be doing just that across 3 videos. So since I read 33 books this year, I'll be talking about 11 books in each video. This first one will be my 11 least favorite books of the year. The second one will be my middle 11 books, and then the third one will be my top 11 books of 2020. So in this first video, we'll be talking about my least favorite books. And really the first 6, I would say, are the ones that I didn't really like. Those were the ones that I actively disliked. The rest of them were books that I didn't think were bad, but I also didn't really care for. The second video, which will be coming out tomorrow, will be all of my middle 11 books. So books that I really enjoyed and really liked, but didn't quite make it to my favorites list. And then of course, the last video will just be my absolute favorite books of 2020, my top 11. So definitely stay tuned because you will be fed content this weekend. So let's just jump straight into it. In 33rd place, we have my absolute least favorite book of 2020. The absolute cream of the crop, okay? And that is none other than Rockin Randy by Bona King. You saw this coming. So this is an erotic e-novella that I read for the fun of it, and I had anything but fun reading it. About 10 pages in, the main character started to talk about how he was so turned on by his love interest that his ass started to get wet. And I was like, wait. Asses don't get wet. I'm not a biologist, but I can certainly confirm that that is not biologically possible. That's when I realized that this genre was a little bit different, to say the least. I did see mpreg on the cover, but I didn't know what that meant, and then I had to kind of learn what it meant the hard way. And yeah, suffice to say, the main character fell in love with a werewolf who impregnated him in his butt. He had a baby in his, like, growing in his rectum. Yeah.
What is this, honey?
The kinkiness of this particular genre aside, because I know some people are into that, and if that's your thing, that's totally fine. The book itself was just really poorly written. It was terrible. I don't recommend it, unless you want to, like, torture yourself like I did. Go ahead. In 32nd place, we have Kitsch by Anthony Joseph. This is a book that I had to read for something, and if I didn't have to read it for that particular thing that I had to write, I would have probably not finished it because I freaking hated this book. It was very much a case of I appreciated the author and his writing and what he tried to do with this particular story. It wasn't bad at all, it just wasn't for me. The stylistic choices of the author is what really turned me off of the story. That and the fact that there was just nothing in this book that was appealing and interesting to me, and unfortunately I just didn't like it. It was a very bleak reading experience. And bleak is the best way to describe the next book on this list, which is The Bone Readers by Jacob Ross, another Caribbean novel that I really wanted to like, and I just didn't. The problem with this book for me is there was too much going on in the story to follow. There was a bunch of unnecessary information. It's crime fiction set on a Caribbean island, a fictional Caribbean island, and the author did not stick to the main point of the story. He definitely strayed a lot and it was difficult for me to follow, and at the end of it I just found the characters to be very flat. I found the entire story to be very bleak and depressing. It was good in the sense that I think that the author really created a very vivid Caribbean environment and married it well with the kind of tones that you usually find in like a crime fiction novel. Like that aspect of it was done really well, the writing and whatnot, but the story itself just didn't really appeal to me, and by the time that I got halfway through I was just skimming. So take what I say about this book with a grain of salt, because by the time I got halfway through I honestly wasn't like computing half of what was going on, and I had to have my friends explain it to me by the end of it. It just wasn't a fun reading experience, unfortunately. So I would recommend the book, but I would not read it again. In 30th place, we have another really disappointing read this year, and that was Marabad and Indra by Samira Ahmed. This was a story that I really wanted to love, but I really did not. And the story itself was actually quite enjoyable. There were 2 things that really kind of put me off. The first one was that there's an aspect to the story that I really enjoyed that the author didn't really expand on a lot. And that would have been fine had it not been for the second thing that irritated me about this book, and that was the romantic aspects. There was kind of like this love triangle triangle thing going on. And then the main love interest, I just did not like him whatsoever. He was a terrible person. If you read this book, he is a terrible person. And the way that the main character just kind of like forgives him so that she could continue to like use him conveniently because she needed to use him to get access to certain things. It was just a mess. I did not like the romance in this book whatsoever, and it really turned me off of the entire story. And this was a book that I was very much looking forward to. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't love it. Number 29, y'all will get mad at me because this was a BookTube favorite this year. Everybody who read this book loved it, except for me. And that was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I don't know what it was about this book that didn't do it for me. Because in hindsight, like, the story itself was really enjoyable. The actual concept of the book I thought was brilliant. I liked what the author tried to do. I did not enjoy it, like, reading. It took me a month to read this book, and it's written in verse. And I think that's part of why I didn't like it. I didn't like the verse. And it's not to say that I don't like books written in verse, because I do. I actually enjoyed Elizabeth Acevedo's first book, which was written in verse. So I don't know what it was about Clap When You Land that just didn't click with me. I did not enjoy this book. I didn't like it. I didn't hate it. It's definitely not like the worst book I ever read, but it definitely isn't the best either. And I struggled to understand what people really like about this book so much. It didn't work for me, unfortunately. So yeah, sorry if you are a Clap When You Land stan. I support you because I know that a lot of people love this book, but it wasn't for me. Number 29 is Sutoko Anada by Yupe Chika. I think this is the first volume in a manga series, and I was really excited for this because it's like the story about this Japanese girl and this Saudi Arabian girl who end up rooming together while going to university in the States, and they're supposed to become friends. This was so freaking boring, and what I disliked about it the most is that it's told in a very episodic style. Each page is like a different story, is like a different scenario. It doesn't feel like we're reading one story arc. It's just a bunch of different things that happen to them, and it reads very much like Islam 101 and Saudi Arabia 101, because the main character is the Japanese girl and she doesn't know anything about like Islam or the Arab world or anything like that. So the other main character is like teaching her throughout the story, like, this is what a hijab is, this is what a niqab is, this is what we do, we pray, da 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 da. And it's like, I really don't need to read this. I'm gaining nothing from this reading experience. It was really boring, and I didn't like it. So the next book is just this really weird book that my friend made me read, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's called Jessica the Wizard Eats a Third Horse. I don't know. I don't know. It was weird, but I enjoyed it. But not to the extent where it's a favorite or even like part of the middle books that I read this year. It was okay. I don't even want to bother explaining what the plot is. It was just the weirdest book that I read this year, and it's the first book that I read this year too. So it's kind of a blur. I have nothing else to say. Next up, we have The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. This is a novella that takes place after the events of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which is a book that I really loved back when I read it. This novella was okay. I didn't care for it too much. It's about basically Percy and, what's his name again? The next one? The main character, Henry or something like that? Henry Montague. Monty, right, okay. So they're basically like trying to have sex for the first time, but they don't know how to do it because they're like, inexperienced, and it's like, 1750 something or something like that. It was fine. I didn't care for it, but I could see why it might be enjoyable for people who really, really loved it, the first book. Then we have another favorite. So we've gotten to the point, obviously, where, these are not books that I hated or that were the absolute worst that I read this year. They just didn't really leave that much of an impact on me. So the next one we have is Hotstopper by, what's her name again? Alice Oseman, I think. Anyways, so I read this one. Everybody loves this book. I don't really care for it. I'm not a graphic novel fan. So that was the first thing, and I just felt like I did not get a lot out of this first story. This is definitely one where you have to read like all of the books in the graphic novel series, but I didn't really care to do that. I'm like, I want to read one good hearty graphic novel, and this just wasn't that. So I could get why y'all love this book. It was okay for me. And then the last two books are two books that I actually really enjoyed, but that weren't anything substantive enough to be in the other two videos, and that was Jack Harmon's two books in the, I forgot what the series is called, but one is called The Babysitter and one is called The Brother. They're both kind of like taboo, smutty stories, e-novellas. They're definitely a lot better than Rockin Randy, I'll tell you that. Jack Harmon is an excellent writer, and I enjoyed these for what they were, but they weren't anything great or impactful. They were just fun, smutty novellas to kind of pass the time. So I enjoyed these. And that concludes my least favorite books of 2020, or my bottom 11 books of 2020. In the comments down below, if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on them, let me know. I would love to know. I will see you all tomorrow with my middle 11 books, so definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.